Silence at 35,000 feet. A point on the radar that flickers, hesitates, and turns off. A plane with 239 people that takes off towards a normal night and ends up becoming a question that doesn't let you sleep. How does an entire flight disappear in the era of satellites? Today, in the Lost Testimony, the mystery of MH370, the flight that vanished without leaving a clear route and changed the way we look at the sky. This case is different because it left almost no direct signs. There was no distress call. There were no emergency coordinates. Only small, automatic data sent to a satellite that said, "I am still active," without saying, "I am here." Each clue opened more doubts, and each answer came with another question behind it. If you think that today everything is recorded, this case will teach you the real price of silence. Early morning of March 8, 2014, Kuala Lumpur. The MH370, a Boeing 777, takes off towards Beijing. Experienced crew, passengers from various countries. Night flight. Everything normal. At 1:19, the cabin says on the radio, "Good night, Malaysia 370. It is a routine message. Minutes later, the transponder, the visible tag of the plane for air control, turns off. On civilian screens, the flight disappears. At the same time, some primary radars register a trace that turns west, crosses over Malaysia, and continues through the Strait of Malacca. The route that should go towards the northeast no longer exists. Nobody off the radar knows it yet. In the houses, the telephones are still asleep. In the air, a plane is already writing another story. The disturbing thing was not a visible crash. It was the silence. There was no Mayday. There were no coordinates. A huge search began at sea. Ships and planes traveled grids for weeks, and an unexpected clue appeared. Small automatic signals between the plane and a commercial satellite. They are connection pings. They do not give the exact location, but they confirm that the plane's system continued breathing for hours. With those times, the technicians drew rings on the map. Each ring marked where the plane could be at each hour. They crossed those rings with fuel consumption, winds, and possible routes. Thus was born a corridor towards the south of the Indian Ocean. There, the search depended on understanding a very deep and poorly mapped sea. Months later, the ocean left some remains on distant beaches. Pieces that confirm the loss of the 777, but not the exact point of the end. The current models help to imagine from which zone they came. They gave probable areas, not coordinates. Enough to follow. Insufficient to close. From the beginning, there were details that did not fit completely. A wide turn on a night without a storm. Systems that shut down without a word to the tower. Courses that seemed like human decisions and, at the same time, a flight that perhaps continued for hours out of pure inertia. Remains that arrive on islands thousands of kilometers away. Partial reports, leaks, and denials. A puzzle with real pieces, but without the complete image. And in the middle, families who learn technical acronyms to sustain a question that no one wants to answer lightly. First theory, a serious technical problem, hidden at first. An electrical fire behind a panel. Smoke that forces systems to be cut. A return turn, looking for a nearby airport. If the priority is to control the incident, the radio can be put in the background. This idea explains the turn and the initial silences. It also explains why systems disconnect without there being time for a discourse. But it doesn't fully answer the hardest question. Why would the flight have continued for so many hours to the Indian Ocean? Why wasn't there a short signal, nor a "we are returning," nor a partial coordinate? Here the theory trembles. Second theory, the silent cabin. A slow depressurization. Lack of oxygen that numbs and leaves everyone incapable. The plane would continue with autopilot until the fuel runs out. This hypothesis explains a long and stable flight and gives meaning to the total silence. But it clashes with the intermediate course changes. too precise for a single aircraft. Did the depressurization occur after someone had already changed the plan? If so, why those prior decisions? If it was before, who made the turns? Here there is also a gap. Third theory, deliberate intervention. Someone in the cockpit turns off systems, changes course, avoids being seen, and disappears in the least observed area of the map. It could be an individual decision. It could be a kidnapping without claim. It fits with an ordered technical sequence and with heights that seem chosen, but the essential is missing. A clear motive, a note, a demand, a proof that signs that script. And to sustain a cover-up for years, with so many countries involved, sounds fragile if nothing solid appears. Here too, the centerpiece is missing. There is a fourth, less cited way that beats as a backdrop. A chain of mixed events. Something real happens on board. Urgent decisions are made. Systems are shut down to address the emergency. Then, the cabin runs out of capacity to speak. The plane continues. The fuel falls, and the end arrives far from any coast. This hypothesis does not dazzle, but it resists. Even so, it crashes again against the same thing. The 2 minutes of data that order the exact chronology are missing. The final twist, the fact that surprises many, is this. The most useful clue did not come from a rescue system. It came from a connection process designed to bill for services. Those routine pings, turned on to know if you have to charge, became a clock. And that watch allowed to draw when the plane was still in flight. Although it did not say where, from that watch concrete improvements appeared. More frequent automatic reports, more resistant beacons, and, in the future, recorders capable of sending a minimum of data by satellite, even if no one presses a button. The case did not bring an answer, but it did bring a direction. To understand the scale of the challenge, think about this. The sky is heavily guarded, but the deep ocean is not. Below the water, there are mountains and valleys that we hardly know. Searching for a plane there is like looking for a whisper in an empty room. Ships pass sonar slowly. The teams interpret shadows on maps of the seabed. Each possible contact demands returning, reviewing, and confirming. It's a patient job. The world, meanwhile, asks for quick answers. Between those two rhythms, this case moves. And that's why MH370 is not just a disappearance. It is a clash between our faith in systems and the reality of a planet bigger than we remember. There is also the human dimension. Families who learn terms they never wanted to learn. Anniversaries they don't want to celebrate. Press rooms with maps and dates. Each theory we launch falls on someone who is waiting. That is why, more than choosing the explanation that leaves us calm, it is convenient to look at the data carefully and accept what we still do not know. Counting well is also a form of respect. Let's go back to the key minute. The tower awaits the transfer to another control. The courtesy phrase never arrives. The point leaves the screen. Hours later, the pings will say that the system was still alive. But the fuel, sooner or later, runs out. When that happens, physics rules. And the ocean, which does not ask questions, keeps the rest. There is no spectacular scene. There is an ending without witnesses. And a void that, since then, occupies a fixed place in the memory of aviation. Was it a chain of discrete failures that the night made invisible? Was it a human decision that programmed silence with precision? Or was it a mixture of both things, where a real problem opened a door and no one could close it? I read you in the comments. If you are interested in real stories told with clarity and respect, subscribe. Here, in the Lost Testimony, we follow these cases without sensationalism and without shortcuts, seeking to understand what others give up as lost. Because some mysteries do not ask for an immediate end, they ask for a sustained look.